Say hello. Oh, there you go. Okay.
I wonder how that's gonna sound on the mic. He's so cute. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Complex Like Wine, the podcast where we talk about complicated things and improve over time just like wine does. We have Chris today, and thank you for coming on and
Hello.
being in person.
Thank you for having me. And, yeah, very, very fortunate that we can be in person.
Yeah. This week we have a Pinot Grigio from Nova Balma, and the bottle says Nova Balma, meaning new hand, is our new winemaking approach using the most advanced technique to enhance natural flavors. So, cheers.
Give it a try. Salud.
Salud.
It's very it's very smooth. It's not like I don't taste a lot of the alcohol.
Yeah, I think kind of there's certain wines where it's like very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were drinking a port that has brandy in it. Like it's very strong.
Mm.
But I think this is definitely more if you're into like a dry white that kind of has really crisp flavors, you'll like it. But
Yeah, I'm very used to like Malbecs and like red wines, but yeah, this is like not too. Yeah, this is obviously different. It's white, but it's very good. Yeah, check it out.
check it out. Link in the bio. Thanks for coming on. And
Thank you.
yeah, we talked a lot before about anxiety, and we both deal with anxiety. So I'm excited to hear like, your perspective on it.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess I can just get started. My anxiety has evolved and adapted many times over. I think growing up, I always worried. I was always one of those children that was just very concerned, and mostly I think about my health. I remember very vividly going to the doctors to get my abdominal area checked out because I had been experiencing some issues, and honestly could have been a number of things. But in that interaction with the physician, I recall the physician telling me or telling my dad actually that she was concerned that I was a worrywart. And so that kind of it stuck with me, and I've kind of carried that with me, knowing that like, maybe I was a little different as a kid and I had these tendencies to worry. And I actually throughout college I experienced panic attacks. So anxiety and I are very, very we're close friends. And I've learned to cope with it, but those panic attacks, what initially started was I really didn't know what it was, and there were so few and far between that I never really realized it was an issue. But I think that normal tendency to worry kind of started to creep into my day to day, and it started to get really bad when my sister was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So my anxiety, specifically, I worry about my health. And, I've been very, very privileged and fortunate enough to not have to worry about things like food and like a home, because I've had a stable, home my whole life. But, my health, for some reason, I've always been attached to worrying about my health. And I have a brother who's actually schizophrenic, but he's a half brother. His side of the family, they do have mental health issues. So for me, it was like growing up, and he was diagnosed when I was like 13. So for me growing up, I was always like, oh, you know what? There might be some risk growing up, but more likely than not, it's on his father's side because he is my half brother. So when my sister was diagnosed in 2013, that's when it was just like, whoa, like this is way more serious. I'm potentially next in line for having a schizophrenic diagnosis. And it was really hard to see, because my brother, he got diagnosed outside of our home. I didn't really experience any of that, him transitioning onto medication. But for my sister, I got to see everything happen. I got to see her try all the new medications, and even the onset, I saw her like have really like paranoid thoughts. I thought she was going through depression, and it was really difficult to see her go through that, because she's my older sister. I idolized her. She had gone to community college and she was preparing to transfer. And so I just she was doing everything I wanted to do. And to see her suddenly kind of, yeah, to get this diagnosis and and for her, it's a bit complicated. I guess we could get into, we could get into it, but, there was a time where I was begging my parents, like, hey, we need to really take care of her. She's going through something. And, there was this mental health stigma that at the time I was unaware of. And my parents were deep in it, and they were like, hey, no, we want her to be a nurse. And if she goes and gets a depression diagnosis, she'll never be a nurse. So just all these misconceptions about mental health and how to handle it. And it's so funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's so sad that like my brother had schizophrenia, and my mom, I just found out, she didn't really work with him to address it. I think he took care of it on his own. So I think there's that I guess she wasn't fully aware of the process. And so for her to now take over my sister's care as her care provider, I want to say she was doing it for the first time, but to have someone in the family with schizophrenia, and then for what's a mental health struggle, to not be so willing to address that within her daughter now. For me, in retrospect now, it's like, what was happening in our family? But that just goes to show you the power of this stigma, and it really holds people back from actually attaining health and the care that they need out of fear. So for me, it's been one of those things where having my sister, having seen her go through those mental health struggles, it's allowed me to kind of make sure, like, okay, no, this is something I need to be very proactive. I need to ensure I'm taking all the measures and make sure nothing, make sure I'm addressing everything in every way I can, because, I don't want this to get any worse. And, also taking every opportunity to talk about it as well. So thank you for having me on.
No, of course. Few questions. How old were your siblings when they were diagnosed?
My brother, I believe, was around 22, 23. And then my older sister, she was 27, 26, 27. Wow. So my brother, they both fit into, I think my sister was at the end of her stage, but for men, I know it's 19 to 27. And that's a fact I've always been able to remember, because I lived in fear for those, I was 22 to 27. I was living in fear of like expecting a diagnosis.
Yeah. And with family too, I think it's really hard, especially when your parents, when they're not taking it seriously or they're not aware enough to know what to do. It makes it feel more not serious to yourself, or downplay that you have like no direction of what to go.
Yeah.
We're going to go with it.
And it's tough, because I told my parents, like, hey, we need to take care of this. And they were just very defiant. And then I went to my sister, and she's like, yeah, I know something's wrong, but like, I'll take care of it. And so it's my fault in a sense that I didn't grab her by the hand and say, we're going to do this now. And I let her, have autonomy and do it on her own. But, in retrospect, I wish I would have said, like, okay, you know what? Like, give me your membership card. I'm going to set up this appointment for you, because who knows what could have happened if her, if it would have been caught earlier, or she would have been treated sooner. We never really know. And it's, schizophrenia is something you just like you live with for the rest of your life. And it's similar to anxiety. Like, I will have anxiety for the rest of my life, and, it's just a matter of managing it and, prescriptions or medications when necessary. But it's something that, you have to manage for the rest of your life, but it doesn't have to define you.
You said your anxiety was peaked during college. Do you remember the first time you realized this is more than just stress? This is something like either an anxiety disorder or just an anxiety panic attack. Do you remember that first time?
I'm a transfer, so I went to community college, and in community college, I remember preparing for exams, feeling very overwhelmed. And I remember that starting like the onset of anxiety and panic attacks. And I think honestly, I've just been so like in Google, I just Google everything. So I think I was able, I'm trying to recall if I was able to know. That's the thing. It's hard. It's 10 years back. I want to say I knew, but I didn't know. Maybe I was struggling with that mental health stigma as well. I was afraid that in getting care at that point too. But it was few and far between, and I don't think I ever talked about it with anyone. But I do remember one particular case where I was watching a friend's play. She was in theater, and I remember like starting to worry about being what if something were to happen and I was just in this spot and I almost felt like this constraint, like I couldn't leave the spot if necessary, and that began to, like, just being in my thoughts, I began to get overwhelmed. And I remember I managed to sit through the whole play, but I remember going home and just being like out of breath and having heart palpitations and freaking out. And yeah, but I don't think it was until I sought therapy that I began to realize what it was, and I began to actually address it. And there was, once I transferred, I began to have, well, this was months after I transferred to university right after, like 4 to 5 months right after my sister was diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout that summer, she was transitioning from medication to medication, trying to find one that fit. And for me, it was trying to help her and trying to, like, be there for her. But it was so hard because I couldn't relate to what was going on to her. And even I remember saying certain things like, hey, like, this is, like, try to overcome it, or try to, like, to not, like, get, like, into the hallucinations, but that's her reality. And so for me to say that, it's just very wrong to say, just, like, almost snap out of it. And it's like, you can't snap out of it. And then the same way with anxiety, you can't just snap out of it. Depression, you can't just snap out of it. For me, it was a learning process, but therapy really helped with that. Yeah. And so, yeah, like waves, and I believe when therapy really helped me out, but then, a stronger wave came back, a couple years ago. And when that wave came back, this was like full blown anxiety. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And that's when I started to see a therapist on a regular basis. And yeah, we were able to manage it. And now it's been a couple years, and it's really interesting the way anxiety evolves. And I don't know, maybe this is similar to your experience. You've seen this, but for me, my anxiety initially started as very anxiety attack related. So it was just anxiety attack, deal with it, address it, boom, you're done. You might be sleepless at night, but for the most part, it's just you're able to address it in the moment. And I got really good at addressing my like anxiety attacks, and I would begin to feel a certain way, and I would be able to quell those fears, and just with the help of therapy, just manage it, and it would just go away. And I would just deal with an anxiety attack maybe once a month, every so often. And then the last couple of months, it just began to manifest as something completely different. And I went from having strictly mental anxiety to now, like, it manifesting in my body. And so when I feel overwhelmed, and it's interesting, I have very particular situations. So when I'm speaking to someone or when I'm eating, I will feel overwhelmed, and I'll start to have difficulty breathing, like heart palpitations every so often, and I'll get, like, numbness in my fingers, all from the difficulty breathing.
Same.
So yeah, and even now, like, if you can tell, I'm having a little bit of a difficulty breathing because it's anxiety, but it's I'm trying to manage, and it's not like I'm having, like, anxious thoughts, but it's just like the sense of being overwhelmed is causing me to feel or manifest these symptoms. Yeah. And so have you had a similar experience?
Oh yeah, that's why it's interesting you're talking about, like, stomach, finger numbness. So my first anxiety attack was in high school when I was between 15 and 16. And I think now that I'm older, it's been almost 10 years since then, I've kind of reflected. I think growing up, I always repressed my feelings and my emotions so much, and always try to take care of things on my own, to the point where it just, like, a soda can just, like, explodes. I just couldn't, and it popped. And from there, it just triggered. I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder as well. And all throughout my high school, I would have them every day, multiple times a day, like, really intense, but they would last maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'd be fine. And then randomly later that day. And so high school was really tough for me my senior year, because my parents were getting divorced, and I'd get anxiety attacks in the middle of class. Wow. And so some of my teachers, I told them, like, hey, I'm just getting anxiety a lot right now. There's a lot of stress at home. So I would leave in middle of class a lot. And that would end up affecting me being able to take tests well, because I would get anxiety during test taking. So it was really hard for me to do, like, A+ on all my classes for a while, which caused more stress and a vicious cycle. But the way for me being able to manage it, I had no idea, because it was so new and I was so confused. And with all this stress, I just felt like it was just trying to get over the intense heart palpitations, sweating, migraine, and then go through the cycle again. Until college, I was able, I think my life situation had gotten different. And so now it was maybe once every few months, maybe once a month, but it would last a couple days. And now I get them once every few months, a really big one, but it'll last a week. And that's when I'll notice my stomach problems where like I can't digest. I have really bad burping problems because just like stress and gas and all that. And I'm really nauseous in the morning. My fingertips, I'm sweaty, headaches. So anxiety is so weird. And you really know, like, okay, there's something going on when it's not just your feelings and heart, but it manifests in your body. And like physically, you can tell there's a lot of stress going on. You're
carrying this stress and it's now manifesting physically in your body. And yeah, it sucks. It's like not fun. No. I wouldn't wish this on anyone because it's horrible. But I think and in my struggle with it and my growth and development, I feel like I wouldn't trade this because I feel like I have become stronger. And the reality is, I forget the statistic. I believe it's 1 in 5 people. So 20% of people in a year will have an anxiety attack. And then 1 in 3 people will have an anxiety disorder within their lifetime. So, like the one thing I kind of always, hold on to is like, I'm not alone. Like this is happening among other people. And it's very common. So it's not something to be afraid of. And it's something I need to be vocal about and share with everyone. And now everyone I speak to knows I have anxiety. I'll meet people and I'll talk to them about anxiety. And I'm probably oversharing, but like, I feel like I need to let people know like, hey, I have anxiety. And for me, it helps me kind of quell those fears and like, oh, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, like they'll get it. They'll know. And if they don't, then maybe I can show them and help them learn about anxiety because maybe they haven't experienced it. But if they do one day experience it, then I can be there for them and be like, hey, I remember Chris was dealing with anxiety. So maybe I can reach out to him. And I've had so many people talk to me about their anxieties and we've been able to work on it together, it's been awesome. Yeah. Really,
yeah. That's good that you've now been able to share friends because it's once you're able to let your close friends know and you're going out, it reduces the level of stress of, okay, what if I have an anxiety or panic attack right now? And your friends are aware. So you just tell them like, hey, I'm going through right now. Just like, give me a moment. Let me like process this. And so sometimes when I'm out or the festivals I go to, I'll get an anxiety attack. And so I let my friends know, like, I'm just going to sit down for a little bit, make sure to try to ground myself. And with therapy, I started doing that this year. It's really helped be able to teach you tools of mindfulness, meditation, ways to kind of get yourself out of ruminating and bring you back down to earth and make you realize, okay, these are just thoughts. They're going to pass. It's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Therapy for me has been, it's been essential. It's been crucial to my development. And I do want everyone to know, whoever's watching, listening, therapy is not something that's out of reach for anyone. If you have a health plan, on your membership card, you'll have a mental health services line. You can call them 24/7. You can get a therapist. And I've done this before a couple of years back when I had my like really strong anxiety at the onset. I reached out to my therapy line and through my health plan, and they were able to connect me with a therapist within 20 minutes. And I was speaking to a therapist, and then I was able to get assistance with finding a therapist in my area. So, and therapy is affordable. That's something I realized because I always had this misconception that therapy is $200, $300 a session, and it's not. It's for me, it was a copay, and I think there are those types of therapy where you can pay out of pocket completely and pay for the whole session that way, and they can be expensive, but I've been able to find great therapists at an affordable price, and it's been essential to my overcoming this anxiety. So I highly recommend everyone, if you need therapy, seek it now. Like don't wait off on it. Like everyone can benefit from therapy, and the great thing is like everyone sees a therapist. Like this is, it's no longer like taboo. Like, and that's it's like the more we talk about this, the more we share with others that like, hey, I'm seeing a therapist, and it's like I have so many friends that have like, oh yeah, I'm seeing this therapist. So it's so common, and like the quicker we start to talk about this, then the easier it will be to talk about it, and more people will seek out these services.
No, you're absolutely right. Since I started the podcast, in the first episode, I mentioned like I started seeing a therapist and reading books, and everyone that's been on the podcast has opened like, oh, I go to therapy too. And even other friends like, oh, I'm so glad you started therapy. This is how I've been doing. And so it's like you said, it's so not taboo anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone sees a therapist, even if you're not going through anything right
Mm-hmm.
now. If you're in like in a really good place, it's still nice to just
Yeah.
have someone to dedicate an hour
Mm-hmm.
once a week, once a month, whatever it is,
Yeah.
to just listen. And now there's apps online. I think BetterHelp is one of them,
Nice.
where
Yeah.
really affordable. And then now there's an app where the ad said it's like Tinder, but for therapy, where you swipe and you match, and you find
Oh,
like a
nice.
good. So it's now like there's a lot of different outlets to find therapy.
Super accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, seek out therapy, please, everyone. And it's affordable. But along with that, I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah, for me, therapy, and sorry, I bring up my sibling schizophrenia because I was dealing with this fear of, me becoming next in line in a diagnosis, and I carried that with me as I transferred, and I still carry that with me. I mean, I truly believe that when my anxiety came out fully blown as generalized anxiety disorder, or when I was diagnosed, I was struggling through. I was turning 28, so I was getting out of this like prime age where you would get schizophrenia, and of course you can get it. I can get it at any age, but for me, I think I was overcoming that fear. It's like, oh, I'm finally turning 28, and it's like, oh wait, like it's a realization that like I can still have schizophrenia, and I started to get overwhelmed, and ultimately what that comes down to is a sense of loss of control. I found myself thinking I'm going to become institutionalized. I'm going to not be able to have a job. I'm not going to be able to have kids. I'm not going to be able to get married. And so all of these fears and thoughts were just kind of overwhelming me. And so I think throughout the years, that's what caused me to get this generalized anxiety and just have this overwhelming fear. And for me, therapy really, first of all, the therapist, because the anxiety started making me feel like maybe this is schizophrenia manifesting. And the therapist was like, this is not schizophrenia. Like this is generalized anxiety disorder. So for me, it was that immediate relief, like, oh, this is anxiety. And her telling me this is manageable. We can definitely work through this and you will overcome this. And it's like, oh wow, okay. Like this is anxiety, and not to say, mental health is mental health, but it's, for me, it was the confirmation I needed that I didn't have schizophrenia. Because for me, it was an overwhelming fear. And what the therapist was able to help me with is really, and this is cognitive behavioral therapy, but she was able to work with my thoughts and ground me and show me that like, hey, this is not, you don't have to think this way. When you get yourself into these catastrophizing thoughts, you can kind of minimize them and you can reduce them, and you can kind of look at them from the outside and kind of realize that, oh, this is a certain way of thinking, but I don't have to think that way, and try to turn it maybe into a more optimistic outlook or a more positive way. But I wouldn't have had that without therapy. So that's why I'm such a big advocate for therapy.
No, therapy just provides you with so many resources. Like for me, it's been providing me different books to read, because you're a big book reader too. Yeah. So that for me, that's been really great. And just the different like tools, like the 5 senses method when you're having an anxiety attack, that's been really helpful for me. Box breathing, just bringing your heart rate down. And so, yeah, go to therapy, people.
Yes.
So now after you're diagnosed in therapy, what are some things that you do now when you're feeling an onset of an anxiety attack or panic attack? Or what are things that help you the most with managing it?
Yeah. So in the moment, I think I go to, it varies by situation, but I've voiced it. So if I'm with friends, just like telling them like, hey, I have anxiety, I'm having an anxiety attack at the moment, it immediately reduces it. And it grounds me knowing that like, this is just anxiety. So that, also just if I'm by myself, like just most of the time it's like an ache in my body, or I'll feel like a tweak in my heart, or like something just goes off, maybe a pain in my head. And I'm just like, oh, this is a stroke, or this is brain cancer, just catastrophizing. And I now just say like, oh, and this is actually something my therapist just told me last week. And so I've been practicing it more and more, but I turned 30 this year, and he's in his mid 30s, and he shared with me that, you have growing pains. And like, this is a normal process of growing. We went through it as adolescents, but now we're going through it again. And, you will go through this for the rest of your life. And you may experience these different tweaks and pains in your body, but it's a natural part of living. And so for me, that kind of grounded me, knowing that like, whenever I start to feel something off, it's like, oh, it's just a growing pain. It's just kind of like minimizing the fear. But I think grounding myself has helped a lot. And I think more than anything, meditation. And for me, guided meditation has helped me the most. For me, really grounds me just being able to listen to someone. And so I recommend like Headspace, Calm, like those are apps that people use. But I don't like to spend money when I don't have to. So I just go on YouTube, and YouTube's a great resource to learn more about your anxiety or any kind of mental health disorder. But there's also a lot of guided meditation. So I'll search up, if I'm having difficulty breathing, guided meditation for breathing, guided meditation for sleep, for anxiety, for positive energy, like just anything I'm feeling in the mood for, I'll seek it on YouTube. And there's a 5-minute, 10-minute, 1 hour long video that will kind of guide you through that meditation. And what helps me, and I actually learned this in a guided meditation video, but I will file my thoughts away, because when you're in the midst of an anxiety attack, you're full blown just worrying, you're in fear, your life is in danger, and you're in that fight or flight mode. And for me, labeling those thoughts, what I'm currently going through, and filing them and putting them away helps ground me. And then also repeating what the YouTuber or whoever is providing the guided meditation, repeating what they're saying. So, we're going to take a deep breath now. So I'll just say, we're going to take a deep breath now, mentally or verbally. And that kind of helps me calm down and really stay grounded and know that, like, the heart palpitations, it's not a heart attack. If my racing thoughts, it's just anxiety. Any kind of stomach pain, it's just anxiety. So that in the moment really, really helps. But I'm a huge advocate for preventive health. So I really try to stay on top of, my eating habits. So alcohol, I stay away from alcohol, and I made an exception for you.
I know, thank you.
and alcohol, sleep. So I try to get my full 8 hours of sleep. Exercise. Exercise is an amazing tool to relieve and kind of get rid of any stress you're carrying throughout the day. But kind of taking that proactive approach and making sure you're taking care of yourself so that you can even prevent the onset of any kind of anxiety attacks. And then also with therapy, just managing your thoughts. I think that really, really helps you kind of labeling what your thoughts are. If you are catastrophizing, if you're, they're called cognitive distortions, but these thoughts that will kind of run on their own if you let them. And so making sure I kind of like, oh no, this is something you don't need to worry about right now, or you don't need to focus on. So let's put that away for the moment and just focus on what we are working on at the moment. And that's really helped me kind of just calm the anxiousness and those racing thoughts.
Yeah, those sound really helpful. Definitely going to put some links to guided meditation videos on YouTube, whoever's watching. For me, I started doing yoga. So nice, I go on YouTube, Yoga with Cassandra, shout out to her.
Yoga with Adrian.
Yeah. The 10-minute morning workout or yoga things, for me, now I've only been doing it for a week because one of my friends just he's being certified to be a yoga instructor. So we did yoga, and I was like, I really need this. It's just nice to be able to stretch, make your body feel more connected, and meditation throughout it. So for me, what helps with my anxiety now is managing is like, okay, checking off all the productive things I like to do throughout the day. So my 10-minute yoga videos, read a chapter, being able to wake up at a good time, or if I'm like going to work now, I always like take a moment, say a prayer, and be like, all right, like God, let me this day go well, reduce my stress, let me be aware and like on top of things, and just trying to be more cautious of what I'm doing. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, I say my boundaries, like I don't want to go out tonight or just little stuff. So it's interesting. Yeah.
And I think part of that is knowing your triggers too. Like if you know, like at a festival, like just hearing you talk about a festival, I've been to Coachella. I've had an anxiety attack at Coachella. Like I know what it can be very overwhelming, especially when you're in a crowded space and you're surrounded by people. And maybe this is something more people can relate to after COVID or the pandemic, like going into a grocery store and like hearing someone cough, and like it's kind of similar. You're just kind of like, oh, you're on edge. And and you don't want the anxiety to control your life, but if you can mitigate those triggers and control it so that the anxiety isn't brought on as hard or as harshly, then I think you should try to do those things. And for me, triggers are alcohol. So alcohol, I drink a beer, I'll have I'll have like anxiousness throughout the following couple of days. Coffee, I'll have anxiety throughout that day if I have too much caffeine. and like lack of sleep. So
Mm-hmm.
if I go without my 6 to 8 hours, well, 8 hours is more realistic, or more ideal. But if I don't get like 6 hours, like if I get like 4.5 hours one night, I will be irritable. I will be more anxious ridden than the following day. So, yeah, just knowing those triggers and making sure you're taking care of those, it's helpful in managing your anxiety. But at the same time, you don't want to let it control you. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Coachella next year, even though I'm afraid I'm going to get anxiety, but like I'm not going to have that stop me from going and enjoying
Mm-hmm.
life, because ultimately I am in control and I can manage this. And yeah, that for me, I don't want to let it manage, but I think
Yeah.
it can make it worse if you do allow the triggers. If you prevent yourself from seeking out the trigger, it can cause the anxiety to get worse. And that's something else I learned through therapy, exposure therapy. So if you have some kind of social anxiety, or if you're dealing with something like that, you need to place yourself in those situations so that you can overcome the fear.
Yeah. I never dealt with social anxiety that much before, but until after COVID, now I definitely have it. I flew back from Northern California to the airport, and no. My family and I, we came back from Washington, and it triggered me really bad. There was a lot of people, and went to a desert event because I thought I'd be fine, and had an anxiety attack in the middle of a desert for a music event. And it's like, okay, now I'm more aware of like, okay, the airport was my trigger, and social anxiety, which now I'm trying to be more cautious of. Okay, doing the meditation, like bringing myself more centered before I go out. When you started having anxiety, was it hard for you to notice your triggers? Because for me, they would come so sudden. Even now, sometimes I don't think I'm triggered by anything. It just happens. And so even now, like I struggle trying to be aware of what my triggers are all the time.
Yeah. I think it's the years of becoming more and more aware, and yeah, it's the way my anxiety has evolved. I like prior, I would be able to drink coffee and it wouldn't be an issue. Even when I was having full on anxiety, I think maybe I didn't connect the two. Alcohol, I could have alcohol and I wouldn't have any issues, but I think it's just now, like possibly with the age, but also the anxiety. I think I'm more aware of everything that's going on in my body, and I can tell like, oh, this is one thing that's off. Maybe it was the sleep, the alcohol, or the caffeine. And so I'm more in tune with my body, and having sought out therapy, I'm now more in tune with my body, but also my mind, and knowing when something is off and when the anxiety becomes more pronounced. And, then I'm okay, maybe it was that alcohol, that beer I had, or maybe it was the 4 hours of sleep I got last night. And it's been in time, but I think it's anxiety. I think my anxiety will evolve, and I'll get new triggers. Maybe I'll relieve some of the triggers I have now, and I'll be able to drink alcohol or caffeine again one day. But I think it's just always constantly being in tune with your body, that I'll constantly figure out new triggers, and just be more hyper aware of those anxiety causing things.
Tell me more about with your anxiety, mental health diagnosis. What are some things that were surprising to learn, or some things you were really unexpected throughout your journey with mental health?
I think therapy is affordable. That was one. I think for me, the realization that I'm not alone, I think that really helped me, because when you're in your room, full-blown anxiety attack, you feel like no one understands you. Like no one is ever going to realize, like they're never going to get you. No one's ever gone through this. And it is somewhat of a naivete or ignorance to the actual reality. But with my therapy and the whole journey, it's like, no, actually many people go through this. So that's been super helpful. Let's think. I think for me, the community and the availability of help has been really nice as well. There's so many services, there's so many resources out there for mental health services and for support groups. There's a lot of opportunities out there to get assistance. And let me think. I think, those are the two that come to mind. But yeah, I think. Oh, and I guess something that's really helped me, and I think I have a general optimistic outlook on life, but generally an optimistic outlook on life. But I think speaking with therapists and working through this, knowing that like I don't have to be controlled by the anxiety, knowing that I will overcome this, and that all kind of puts this like, you know, it removes the cloudy rain in my head, and it just makes me realize like, oh, this can be overcome, and I will overcome this, and I won't struggle with anxiety every day for the rest of my life. But that I think has helped me a lot in traversing my mental health, and knowing that like I will get better, and this is not it doesn't define me, but it makes me a better person. Yeah.
For me, I think the different types of anxiety and how it involves, that was really surprising to me. And I, like you said, it's not going to always be like this. For me, I was kind of bitter for a while because I was so upset I didn't have any issues with it until I was like 15, 16. And I thought like, oh, this is going to be my life forever. Kind of almost makes you handicapped in a way. There's times where I just couldn't go to school, or physically I was so sick, I'm throwing up because I'm so stressed. And now seeing the way it's evolved, and now with therapy, just being able to learn more, just like, again, that support group, the tools you need. Like something surprising again, how many people go to therapy? How many people have anxiety? And when I was diagnosed, knowing, okay, what are the different diagnoses within anxiety? What does that mean? And now being able to do research on what does that mean? What can I do about it? And so,
absolutely.
Being able to now be in a place where I can manage it really well, and I'm not immediately going to like dooming thoughts of, okay, I'm going to die. This is going to be over. Now it's like, okay, I'm going through a moment. What do I need to do to kind of readjust myself?
Yeah, I think for me as well, having that the diagnosis, it really grounded me, knowing that this is just anxiety. It is generalized anxiety disorder. And then now labeling it now helps you overcome it. Because now, rather than searching like what's going on with me, you're actually searching, okay, generalized anxiety disorder treatments or help, or, you know, you can actually work on it now. So in that same way, it's you if you are struggling with any kind of similar feelings, or maybe it's depression or any kind of other issue, you should seek that help so you can get that definitive care. And there are medications, and there's therapy and help that you can receive to address it. But yeah, you don't have to live like this for the rest of your life, and it's super, super helpful to know that.
Yeah, it's like a huge weight off your shoulders. Like, okay, I'm not bounded to this for my whole life. Something else that surprised me, and I learned it from the book When the Body Says No, is depression and anxiety are connected. If you're having anxiety that's repressed, your body's gonna end up using that cortisol and ends up becoming depression. And so for me, it always, now that I learned that, I'm like, oh, it makes sense. Why was I always so depressed when I was going through an anxiety episode and I didn't do anything about it? I just let it happen. And so that's been something now I'm like, okay, more aware of like, okay, am I depressed? Am I feeling a little suicidal? Like, well, is it connected to anxiety? Okay, like now I know how to adjust that too.
Yeah, and that's another thing is you kind of are better mentally prepared. I know there's a link between anxiety and depression, so I'm always aware of I know what the depression symptoms are, so I can be on the lookout in case it ever does get worrisome. And I actually recently, in the last couple of months, when I was having the stronger onset of my anxiety, I started to notice this hopelessness and feeling like maybe I'm never gonna get better, and it was very brief, but I started to realize like, oh, this could be the depression coming on. So it really, and this is my fault, because I was kind of being lazy and just kind of I was placing a band-aid over my anxiety and just saying, okay, I'm anxious today, I'm going to do meditation and I'm going to try to resolve it that way. And I wasn't exercising, and this was, you know, we're still in the pandemic, so I'm not really seeing friends. I wasn't yet vaccinated, so like all of these concerns about COVID, they were just piling on, and I was just dealing with them in an unhealthy way. So I would just watch YouTube for hours on end. I would watch Netflix, and I wouldn't really address it. And the kind of realizing that I was potentially bringing the onset of depression, it kind of made me realize, okay, I need to be more proactive at this because my anxiety it's becoming more and more controlling over my body. And I began to exercise. I began to start seeing friends when it was safe to do so. And that really began to help me realize, okay, you know what? This is not a normal living situation. The pandemic will end. And it really helped me kind of overcome those anxieties being just at home and being at my own devices and then not really, and just overthinking and overwhelming myself and those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just remembering when we talked on the phone, we talked about both of us getting our wisdom teeth out and getting an anxiety attack in the middle of it.
Oh no. Yeah. Fun times. Yeah, that's, so I can work through like one of my anxieties and like, so even with the vaccines, I got really anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to my fear of loss of control or fear of not necessarily death, but just loss of control, not being in my body and not being able to do what I want, no autonomy, being in the chair in the dentist, the dental office, you know, it's a huge fear. And I actually went to go get my procedure, and they were going to do local anesthetic. And they placed in the swabs with the numbing gel. And this is just numbing gel. This is not like the whole like, shots.
Yeah.
So, or lidocaine or whatever they were planning on using. I began to feel really like I started to feel the numbness, but then I started to get tightness in my throat. And then I began to feel very overwhelmed. And then I thought I began to have difficulty breathing, you know, like hallmark anxiety, symptoms. And I knew it was anxiety. So I knew I was like, you're fine. Nothing's going to happen to you. But in that moment, the dentist realized, you know, this is related to anxiety. We should really, refer you to an oral surgeon. And so it's a blessing, but it's also very scary because this is the first time I'm going to see a oral surgeon. This is the first time I'm ever going to be put under. So I had general anesthesia. And so the dentist was very awesome. She really helped. She understood that I had anxiety. She walked through everything with me. She let me know when she was putting the IV bag in. She let me know when she was going to place the anesthetic. And the way my thought process was, and I know I have anxiety, and the whole time I'm leading up to this procedure, I'm getting worried, and I'm trying to placate those fears and just say, okay, you know what? Worry about it when you're there. Don't worry about the day before. Don't worry about it now because it's going to happen tomorrow. So there's no point in worrying about it now. And being in the seat, realizing, okay, she's putting the IV bag. Okay. Like it's getting more serious. And she pointed out like my heart rate was 150 and she was just like, oh, and she's like, what's your normal heart rate? And I'm like, it's about 60 when I'm not anxious. And she's like, okay, this is high. So, you know, she's obviously looking out for any kind of adverse reaction. So, and high heart rate is one of those symptoms. So, and then the fear, I'm thinking, local anesthetic, this is a foreign antigen coming in my body. This could potentially cause a reaction, allergic reaction, anaphylactic shock. I could die. I could end up in the hospital. That's the train of thought, that I get. And I have to remind myself, this is anxiety. You're fine. Yeah. I was in a medical institution. So I was fine if something were to happen. There were dentists all around me. There was like, they had monitors on me. So like, I knew I was going to be fine. But it's that fear and anything new, and the vaccine too. It's like, this is a foreign body coming into my body and I could have a reaction to it. And although it's very rare, it happens. And so it's one of those things that I have to overcome and know that I'm fine. If something happens, I'm going to be fine. But it's just that overcoming those fears and grounding myself, knowing this is anxiety, and it's just a process, and it's something I'll have to work with for the rest of my life. But, it's good to have those experiences because now I know, okay, I'm fine if I go under anesthetic, and I'll be fine. I might have anxiety, but you're going to be fine. So it's exposing yourself to that helps you overcome those fears.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. How was your experience getting your wisdom teeth out?
So I've never really been anxious at the dentist. Mm-hmm. I know some people it's a huge phobia. For me, I've never really had a problem with that. Like after going through braces and all that, you just kind of get used to, at least for me, I was. So I was fine. Until they put the mask on me for the silly gas or whatever that was supposed to completely put me under. In the middle of it, all of a sudden, really intense panic attack. Ooh. And I'm like trying to keep it cool. That way I'm not like freaking anyone out, but I'm like really struggling. And they couldn't put me to sleep. And they waited a long time. I guess they put it higher. And I was just still awake, and I could feel my eyes watering because I was just trying to keep it together. And so like, okay, we're just going to continue. And so I'm like having a panic attack with them, like completely aware of them, like yanking at my
Wow.
molars. Heard them crack my molar, and I was just like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like, let's get this done with soon. And so afterwards, I remember the next few days while I was like recovering, healing, I was just on edge about everything. I guess I was fine when I was done. My dad took me home because I started crying because they left one of the molars in.
Oh,
and I was
no.
like, it's so lonely. And I'm like,
Oh my
and I'm like,
God.
look at the trees, like they're so beautiful. And my dad's just like, what the heck?
Oh my gosh.
But I was really surprised by my reaction because like, dang, is my anxiety, like my adrenaline going that fast that they just can't put me to sleep.
Oh, wow.
And I was like thinking like, okay, am I gonna feel everything? And so, God, I was really shocked with how intense of a reaction I got because I was totally fine, and then all of a sudden, but like you said, now I know, okay, if I have to do surgery again or for whatever reason they need to get that last molar out, I'm like, okay, I know what to expect, and I know how bad it feels. And so it's like having that experience of like, okay, you've been through this before, it's nothing new, like you're fine, you're okay.
Yeah, and it helps. It's so funny you bring up seeing the beautiful trees, and like I was so out of it. I got my procedure done at USC, and like I was trying to joke like, hey, I'm a Bruin, like I hope this doesn't offend you guys, and like I had the gauze in my mouth, and they were just like, okay, like all like laughing, like okay, like no worries. They couldn't understand me. And my dad drops me off at my home, and he goes to pick up my prescriptions. He calls me. He's like, hey, the pharmacist needs your social security number. And I'm just like, no, don't give it to her. Like, this is obviously like a scam. Like, she's gonna steal my identity. And I've had my identity stolen before. So I'm like, do not do this. And I'm in the midst of this, like, you know, the effects of the anesthetic. And I'm just like, I'm loopy, and I'm just like, don't do it. Don't give her my social. And no, obviously it was all good, but it's so funny. Yeah.
I don't know why I was just so emotional. Like, God, nature's so beautiful. My last molar's gonna be so sad by itself. Like, they did me dirty. Why would they do that to me?
Yeah.
So weird.
And it's so interesting. I had my top two were taken out. No issues. Just like very easy. The local anesthetic, and this is before my anxiety. But now with these impacted teeth, and then with my anxiety, it just became this overwhelming thing. And now it's like, will I always have to use general anesthetic? Will this be something I have to go on and use for the rest of my life? But you know, if it's an option, I'll take it. But you know, I think I will be able to overcome the anxiety one day and not be so fearful in getting any kind of work on my teeth. But hopefully that's the last work I ever have. I'll pour out.
No more. There shouldn't
hopefully your molar never has any issues.
I know. Supposedly, like my brother, he's missing his teeth. Like, I'm missing one, and my brother doesn't have any of his molars. So it's just so weird.
Oh, he's blessed.
Yeah, he has nothing to deal with it. I was totally chipmunk cheeks for a long time. This side was impacted, and so this side like had like a golf ball right here. It was so bad.
Yeah.
I recently had been donating plasma.
Ooh, okay.
And so I would notice the first time I did it, they told me like, your heart rate's too high. You need to sit down and we'll check back your heart rate again. And so I'm like, sometimes you don't know you're anxious until you're like, okay, like, all right, I need to do my breaths, ground myself, like, I'm gonna be okay. And so with that, I think it's directly related to like, I've gone through how bad it feels. Like, it's fine. Like, people are professional. Like, I'm in safe hands. Yeah. But
and I forget what you said. In one of the last episodes I was listening to, I think episode 12, you mentioned, you know, you've survived every one of your worst days. I forget, you mentioned one of those phrases, and it was like, oh wow, yeah, that's so like empowering. Like, yeah, we've been through this, you know, we've overcome all these days. So like we are more stronger and more powerful because of this. So I think that's very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. I read that somewhere, and I had to sit with it because at first, like, what does that mean? Like, today's just as bad, but then you kind of realize, like, you've been through the worst. For me, it was being really super suicidal, super depressed, just crying for months. And now recently going through a huge transition, feeling really bummy and just kind of want to sulk. And then I have to kind of snap myself out of it and be like, you've gone through way worse. This is nothing compared to the days you've gone through. Like, you got this. It's just kind of having to change the way you talk to yourself. Being like, you got this. You can do it. Like, get your stuff together and just kind of give yourself compassion, though. Like, it's not easy. You don't have to, like, pretend it's not real.
Yeah.
Like, acknowledge your feelings and recognize what they're coming from.
Mhm.
But it's also remembering you've gone through your worst days
Mhm.
and you made it. So you can easily do all the days ahead.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's so it is empowering knowing that like you will overcome this and it doesn't need to define you and that you're stronger because of who you are today.
Mhm.
But I think it all definitely starts with you admitting, something's off. You need seeking help. And I think if anyone is struggling with that at the moment, there is help available. No matter what you're going through, someone is there to help you, whether it's a loved one, a friend. If you're having any kind of suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety, seek care because you can overcome this and you will overcome this. And there's hotlines so you can talk to someone anonymously if you're going through anything. And I think that's one thing our generation is getting better about, talking about these kind of taboo topics and ensuring that we're all taking care of each other and making sure that we're all aware that we're not alone. And that for me is what really helps me, knowing that like even coming here, my name's Chris and I have anxiety. Being able to share with others about that brings this whole like makes me feel so much more satisfied knowing that I can potentially be helping someone. And I've heard many of your other speakers mention this, but it's like, I'm being vulnerable and I'm putting myself out there, sharing my story, and it's not easy. But knowing that I could potentially help someone really helps me know that this is worth doing. And I thank you enough for I can't thank you enough for having me on the platform and providing this space for other people to listen and people to share their stories and hopefully relate and understand that they're not alone in their struggle.
No. Well, thank you. And then thank you for being here. I know with anxiety, it's really scary to do. And we talked about kind of the doubts of, should I do it? Should I not? And all that stuff. And so I just want to say thank you. You did awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, shared a lot of stuff. And the thing with this podcast, it's everyday people dealing with everyday stuff that's messy and complicated. And just knowing, again, you're not alone. Like, here's two people that have generalized anxiety disorder. I also have PTSD. And you just realize it's not like some glooming thing weighing over your head. It's, like the angel devil shoulder thing. It's not that. It's just, it doesn't define you, but it could be a part of you and you can learn from it and also educate others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the pod, with people out there?
I think maybe I'm trying to think of more techniques or tools I've used. Exercise, eating healthy, sleep, yoga. Yoga is amazing. Guided meditation, journaling. I journal. I try to journal like at least once a week. It's kind of hard, but whenever I am feeling anxious, I'll journal. It kind of grounds me, just writing my emotions, thoughts, working through all of that. Walking. Going out walking, not putting your phone down. I think our generation, we're so tied to being on our phones. We're always on our phones, and I'm guilty of this as well. I'll be on YouTube very late, and I don't have social media, with social media, you also begin to compare yourself, and you can do that to an extent on YouTube because you're seeing all these people, and I think putting your phone down and giving yourself that time off, either before bed or just giving your time to kind of just not be on your phone, because that really can cause you to go into a vicious cycle of thoughts. But pick up a hobby, art. I know you're into DJing.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Just listen to aggressive music and art. But that just any sort of outlet just to kind of not distract you, but help you get connected with yourself while also putting away the ruminating negative thoughts.
Yeah. Exactly. But I've noticed that like in any kind of hobby where you're working with your hands, and it really just kind of takes you away from your thoughts, and whether it's painting, gardening, or knitting, crocheting, like those really do give you the time to just focus on what you're working on, and it provides you this zen-like state where it's just like you're not thinking about anything else. And if I can make a plug, I just finished The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Very, very interesting book. But for me, what I learned from it was just being present and the power of being present, and how often we are not in the present. And maybe, an exercise for everyone, start to listen to your thoughts and really think about what you're thinking about. Are you focused on the past? Are you focused on the future? Because these it's just a natural way our thoughts are created, and they've manifested the way our brain is wired. We can control that though to be more in present. And it's amazing because when you're present, you really find this peace of just, it's really insane. And the only thing I can equate it to is being my faith and being praying and being in communication with God. That really kind of just washes away everything else, and being in that present state just kind of facilitates this state of mind. And it's a beautiful thing. So I recommend it for everyone. I think that's it. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. Thank you. I'll put the link in the bio. And yes. I guess the book ties back to what you said of, when you got your wisdom teeth out, like there's no reason to stress about it
exactly.
now. And for me, that's been really helpful. Just, whatever, if you believe in God, if you believe in the universe, just trusting in that, taking it day by day and be like, there's no point on sulking or being anxious now. It's not productive.
Yeah.
It just kind of sets you back. So it's just taking day by day. And when you face it, and just trusting that you got it.
Yeah. And it's really cool because he brings up this part where he talks about if there were no humans on Earth and you went up to an animal and asked what time it was, the animal would say the time is now. They have no idea of past or present. They have no 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And that it's very interesting because we've developed this construct, and we do need time, of course, but we don't need to sulk in the past. We don't need to be worrying about the future. And it's interesting because he talks about how even when we are thinking about the past, we're doing it in the present. So we're using our current state to reflect on the past, and that can change over time. And even as we age, our memories change and fade. And so, and even in the moment, we're looking at the future, and we're using the present state. However we are feeling in the moment, we may feel that way about the future. So if we're feeling happy, we might feel optimistic. If we're feeling sad, we might feel negative about the future. So even keeping that in mind, knowing that, it kind of helps ground me and know, okay, like it's just very, very fascinating. So anyone interested in reading, I highly recommend The Power of Now. It's a very interesting book, and it can help you in being more present. And I know it's very popular and it's helped a lot of people. So consider checking it out.
I'm definitely going to be reading it soon. I'm finishing the few that I have now, and it's like next on my list.
Yeah. I'm reading, I'll be starting When the Body Says No next.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know what you think about it. Yeah. I've mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but that book really puts perspective, stress, and what it does. And it's more motivation to me, like, okay, don't get stressed.
Yeah. And I guess the future physician in me wants to just do a PSA. Make sure you go see your primary care physician, go get your vaccines, go get your checkups, just do your due diligence, and go see your doctor.
Yeah. Take care of your mind, body, and soul, people.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I had fun. It was good talking about anxiety, and I know other people are going to appreciate what you shared.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for this episode. Links in the bio, like always. And link to the wine if you want to check it out. If you want to share the episode with any family, friends, that would be really awesome. No need just to plug me, but if you think someone could benefit just from listening, please feel free to share. If you have questions or comments you want to share with me, or even topics that you want to suggest, email me, reach me on Instagram. So open to hearing. If you want to be on the pod, feel free to message me too. We'd love to have you. Anyway, thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
I wanted to jump in and be like, comment, subscribe, subscribe up here.
It's okay. I'll insert that right now.
Oh, shoot.